Patricia Douglas. Allison Fernandez. Elizabeth Frazier. Natalie King.
Present.
Christina Pepe. Mercedes Perez. I see Mercedes on the. Michael Tomer.
Present.
And Commissioner Hagan is not here, but his office notified us that Rich Reedy will act as his proxy for this meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And we've established quorum. We have 6 in the room, plus actually we have almost a majority. So thank you everyone for being here today. Public comment time. I see that we have some guests with us. I'm very excited that you're here. Thank you for coming and joining us. As you know, this is a volunteer board. We're here because we care about the cultural assets of our community. And so I'm assuming some of you are representing those different entities. So thank you for taking the time to come down to the county center and join us today. Also, we have several members of the public online. And I noticed that we do have C.T. Bowen with the Tampa Bay Times from the media with us as well. So thank you for joining us. I do want to go ahead and ask the staff if we have any cards that have been put in for public comment.
Did anyone sign in to make a comment, Kathy? No.
Okay, so no public comment. If you did want to make public comment, you wanted to put a card in, now is the time. So, okay. With that, we're going to move on to our first order of business, which is the approval of our March 3rd, 2023 meeting minutes. Hopefully you all had a chance to take a look at those. If there's anyone who wants to make a motion for approval and if discussion about any changes.
So moved.
With a motion and a second, are there any changes or discussion about the minutes? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Show it approved. And I'll go slower for those online. All right, so we're going to move on to our next agenda item, number 5, our SEPG application cycle. Before we do so, just want to share, as we do move on to these next 2 special event partnership grant applications and the approval of the grant scores and award recommendations. Again, thank you to those of you who have come and are joining us online. I do want to have the staff explain the scoring process before we get started in the actual process.
The procedure is as follows. The members of the Cultural Assets Commission serve as grant reviewers for the Special Event Partnership Grant. Cultural Assets Commission members were asked to identify any conflicts of interest with a particular applicant organization in advance of scoring. If a conflict of interest was determined, the member recused themselves from scoring that particular application. Cultural Assets Commission members reviewed all other applications and submitted their individual scores. Staff averaged all panelist scores to determine a final score for each organization. Once all average scores are announced, the Cultural Asset Commission will vote to approve. Grant awards, however, will not be final until after approval by the Board of County Commissioners. We ask that applicants in attendance who have any questions about the process contact the Arts Council.
Well, thank you very much. And so we will move into the staff summary of we did the staff summary, and we'll go ahead and do the approval of the grant scores and award recommendations, number 6 on our agenda. For that, I'd like to ask staff to do an overview of the different scoring, and you should all have a copy of the breakdown. And thank you for this product. I know this is something that has evolved. We've, from a tracking and being able to see it all in one snapshot. I think this has been proven to be very helpful. So thank you. I know that there's a couple of notes that we need to make. I know there was a couple of applicants that although we scored them, they were unable to be taken forward for approval because of a 990 issue. So if you'd like to go ahead and go over that with the ones that we're going to be approving today as well.
Okay, we did have one organization, Hispanic Cultural Center, that applied for 2 projects, but their tax exempt status is not current at the moment. So they were trying to get that back. They will apply for the next status the next cycle of grants, but they were not eligible we determined yesterday they were not eligible. So they have been removed from the scoring. I will just go through and read the applicant name, the event name, and also the average score. Tampa Caribbean Festival, Inc. Event, Tampa Bay Caribbean Carnival. Average score, 70. Friends of the Riverwalk, Inc. Event name, Tampa Riverfest 2024. Average score, 80.20. Friends of the Riverwalk Trick or Treat 2023. Average score, 74.50. Friends of the Riverwalk, Inc. Event, Riverwalk Holiday Spectacular 2023. Average score, 76.90. Friends of the Riverwalk, Inc. Event, July 4th Boat Parade 2024. Average score, 87.70. Ybor City Fresh Market, doing business as Ybor City Saturday Market. Event name, Ybor City Saturday Market. Average score, 76.30. Tampa Pride, Inc. Event name, Pride Fest. Average score, 75. Tampa Bay WFF Foundation, Inc. Event name, Tampa Bay Wine and Food Festival. Average score, 77.10. Tampa Film Institute, Inc. Event, Gasparilla International Film Festival. Average score, 91.20. Ybor Merchants Association, Inc. Phantasma Fest 2023. Average score, 74.50. South Shore Chamber of Commerce. Event, 33rd Annual Ruskin Seafood Festival. Average score, 79.90. Tampa International Fringe Festival, Inc. Event name, Winge. Average score, 64.90. River Tower Foundation. Event, River Tower Festival. Average score, 81.90. On Bikes, Inc. Event name, On Bikes Winter Wonder Ride and Concert. Average score, 77.60. Gasparilla Music Foundation, Inc. Event name, Gasparilla Music Festival 2024. Average score, 86.67. Silver Meteor Gallery, Inc. Event name, Karmada on Ybor. Average score, 72.30. Gasparilla Festival of the Arts. Event name, Gasparilla Festival of the Arts. Average score, 92.67. The Nathan B. Stubblefield Foundation, Inc., WMNF Tampa Bay. Event name, Tropical Heat Wave. Average score, 79.50. United Citizens Coalition, Inc. Event name, Tampa Taco Fest. Average score, 80.10. Live, Achieve, Believe, Inc. Event name, Suicide Awareness Showdown. Average score, 58.40. Tampa International Fringe Festival, Inc. Event name, 8th Annual Tampa International Fringe Festival. Average score, 77.30. New Tampa Players. Event name, 2023-2024 season, including Shrek, Dreamgirls, and Mamma Mia. average score 75.20. The Victory Ship, Inc., event name Victory Ship Holiday Extravaganza, average score 57.60. Miss Latina Corp., event name Follow Your Dreams, average score 57.50. Countdown Arts, Inc., event name Countdown Improv Festival, average score 82.60. Tampa JCC Federation, Inc., event name Tampa Jewish Arts and Cultural Festivals, average score 82.30. Tampa Bay Pride Band, Inc., event name Season 10 for Concerts, average score 61.40.
Thank you very much. And as you saw, we had a very long list this year, or this cycle. So I think it's great that we have so many, because it means that the word is getting out, that there are interested parties looking to partner with the county for these funds. Before we move to, we historically have either taken everything as a slate. There have been times when we've discussed individual ones. We can take them as a slate, but we can take some of them out to discuss. I want to just open it up to the floor, to the members, to have you share any thoughts on this slate of any of the scoring, any specific issues or questions or concerns about any specific application. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody online. I'm going to go ahead and take the privilege then as chair to share a few thoughts. I will share with you that I spent probably more time on this slate, not just because there was a lot, but because I spent more time on each one individually. And, the evolution of the conversations we've been having over the last 5 years about really honing in and evolving the criteria and evolving the scoring and assuring that the dollars that we have the ability to point towards these events are really the highest and best use, and that they're really achieving the goals that were set out by our bylaws. And so with that in mind, I reread all the bylaws, I reread all the criteria, and I really dug in on some of these. And so, the word I'm going to use is I was a little bit brutal. I scored 9 of them with zeros across the board. So, and I found that I did that for 3 different reasons. The first was that there was several that in my mind, did not meet the criteria of either being the new event that we were helping incubate and get off the ground to create this cultural asset value, or they were an existing event that had been, especially if they had been long-term events that were not in any articulated way within the application showing or demonstrating how they were going to expand or grow their reach with these dollars specifically. So there were several that fell for me from that perspective, and I just didn't feel they were eligible at all. So I put zeros across the board. There were a couple that, looking at it from a funding perspective, looking at their budgets, looking at their expenses and their revenues, there were some that, in my mind, from a grant perspective, they were upside down, meaning they actually showed us in their budget that their revenues were exceeding their expenses. Well, if that's the case, then I don't know that it's a good spend for county dollars to provide them additional dollars on top of their projected revenues, because that it doesn't show a need. So, and then there was a couple that I just didn't feel that they didn't meet the core of cultural asset. I am an absolute proponent, and many of you know this, of mental health. And I work deep in this space, especially in the policy side. But there was one that the event itself was health and wellness. And so for me, as much as we've talked about, you can have an event that has a cool cigar theme or has a cool theme that is a Tampa Bay theme, the core of it is not a cultural asset focus. And so I found that to be the case. I also saw, and I actually asked staff to provide me a little information, there was 2 that, and I'll go ahead and point them out, but New Tampa Players and the Tampa Pride Inc. events, Pride Fest and the 2023 and 2024 season, both of those activities, I was familiar with them and I believed that they had received Arts Council funding. And so the other provision of our criteria is that these organizations have to be not receiving funding from other county buckets. And so, those two stood out to me that over the last several years, they've been receiving funding from other grants. And so I don't know why it wouldn't be justified in my mind under our criteria that they could seek these grants. So again, like I said, I was a bit brutal. I really dug in and read through everything. And so I just wanted to put that on the table that some of these scores were probably skewed pretty hard because I put flat zeros across on 9 of them. So with that said, I just, again, I'll open it back to the floor of any thoughts or comments on what I just shared in my perspective. So Santiago?
Yeah, Madam Chair, going back to a few things that you just said, specifically the one where if you're receiving funds from some other county area, county bucket, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to award additional dollars. Is there any way to weed those out so they don't come to us for scoring? So they're ineligible from some other standpoint, from some other criteria, and then they just don't come, because some of us may not be aware that they're getting funding from over here, or funding from over there, and then we just, on great faith, read the application, and it's a lot of information. I don't think folks that are not a part of this process understand how much there is to look at when you're trying to score one of these applications. There are a lot of documents, a lot of attachments, a lot of files you have to open, the scoring. So again, is there any way that those might not come before us because they're just not eligible from that standpoint?
We do screen for that. So the ones that have been Arts Council grantees in the past, the two that she mentioned specifically, one was general operating support and the other was community arts impact funding, but that was last year. They did not apply for the Arts Council this year. They applied to cultural assets.
Okay, so we approved folks that were just coming to one bucket for funding.
Right.
Not
we vet that extraordinarily carefully.
Okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought they were in this batch and they were again getting funding from somewhere else and we were providing additional funding.
Well, and my point is that, obviously if they take this funding, I would hope they would recuse themselves from other funding, but if they're eligible for other buckets, and they've been receiving those funds year after year, for different things, is that going to be a good ask of this bucket, right? Because again, this is a limited bucket. And so if they have that opportunity and have been historically receiving those dollars, then I would want to have the ability to ask the question of why are you seeking these dollars when in lieu of those when you've been receiving those all these years? Because I think, again, we have to make sure that the dollars that we have highest and best use, and that if there's other funds available to them that they've already historically been receiving, my question is why are you coming after these and not those? Right? Especially if it's operational, because if they're replacing operational grants from the Arts Council, and again, when I looked at some of these, they were just repackaging it for ours, and it wasn't as good of a fit as I think they are for the Arts Council.
Madam Chair, I wanted to just jump on something else that you had said or continue with that thought. In particular, two I felt may not be eligible, and I'm wondering how we might better be guided in understanding eligibility, and in particular, the New Tampa Players and the Tampa Bay Pride Band, only because it felt operational, that these were regular programs that were scheduled as a seasonal opportunity, that I'm not sure, because it wasn't in the documentation, that they would be offering other things, like these were uniquely special. Right. It just felt like it was part of their lineup, and therefore I made the comment in my review. I still graded them accordingly because I was uncertain of their eligibility, but they did receive low marks because it did appear that these were operational support grants.
They are an event, the eligibility criteria, we looked at that very carefully for that very reason, because it did look like a season support on those two rather than a specific event. But the actual wording says that it can be a series of events throughout the year. So it's a little fuzzy. We didn't think we could say they weren't eligible, but it does sort of look like general operating support, season support, operational support more than, but there's nothing in the guidelines for cultural asset, for the special event partnership grant that was clearly, that we could clearly say they weren't eligible.
Then I would recommend maybe, if we can, as a group, or at least as individuals, recommend that they have a little bit more of a robust discussion in their summary as to why these things are festivals and special versus their regular programming opportunities.
And I would argue that we do have within our application, it specifically has, and I think it's number 4, where they're supposed to articulate to us how these dollars are going to grow, expand, incubate. And every time I saw something, I went right to that section and I would reread that. And if it didn't make the case, then I went back again and reread. So we do actually have that question. And so again, if it's a just a haphazard, they just didn't articulate it, and so therefore, but it does, but it wasn't captured. That's a different conversation with our applicants about making sure that they really understand that that's our focus, which is part of why we moved to the 100 point. We went deeper on the questions, because that is the number one thing, is we have to be able to demonstrate how these dollars specifically and tangibly are growing or expanding an existing event, be it a series or a standalone, right? So I'm sorry, Martina.
Oh, no, that's fine. First of all, Madam Chair, thank you for your leadership, because your opening remarks were very, very helpful. As for me anyway, I continue to kind of learn this process, and the fact that you zeroed out certain ones, it didn't occur to me that that was actually an option. I assume that once they make this list that we see, that they are worthy of consideration. I would have zeroed out also, and for the same reasons that we've talked about, those particular ones. And I understand the fuzzy, but maybe we pull those out for discussion to modify the scoring today. I don't know if that's appropriate. But I really, really appreciate your counsel and your leadership helping us all get better at this as we go along. But I think I agree with everything everybody else has commented. Yeah, but thank you.
I agree with Patricia as well. Like I didn't give anything zeros, but there were a number that I scored relatively lower. And I think we're probably, it's the same group that we're all talking about.
Well, then any other additional just open comments? Then what I'd like to ask is the ones that you would have considered giving zeros but didn't, maybe weren't as aggressive as I was, which are those? So I think I'm hearing that Tampa Pride Inc. is one that we need to not do as a slate, and New Tampa Players are the two we want not do as a slate. Are there any others that you all feel that we should extract from the slate for further consideration?
The Live Achieve.
Okay. One that I would put on the table was, and again, I think this is an amazing asset otherwise, but the Victory Ship had a request that was for lighting. And I didn't feel that capital investment per se was, I think it was packaged, it was creatively packaged. By the way, I do this often when I'm putting in appropriations at the state level. You find the right, so I saw my writing style in there, but I don't think that it fits this criteria of this. So the Victory Ship as well. That one, I was on the borderline, but it scored very, very low. And I think that was reflective of everyone kind of recognizing it wasn't maybe a perfect fit. I will also say that one, if you look at it, their eligible award was only $4,200, $50. And so their total award is like $2,700. So I think that one's probably, it's not a high value, if it makes sense. I don't know how much digging you want to do.
Miss Latina, I felt also missed eligibility.
Okay. Any others? And we have, let me make sure I have the right one. So Miss Latina Corp, Follow Your Dreams, 30911. Okay, and if you don't mind, let me know the number. I'm going to write the numbers down so that when we have it for record keeping. So 30911. Let me go back to Live Achieve. That number is 30904. Winge is 30895. Tampa Pride is 30887.
The Victory Ship is 30909.
30909. New Tampa Players is 30908. Any others for consideration outside of the slate Seeing no additional, anyone online want to weigh in? I know it's hard for you to get our attention. Okay, seeing,
Excuse me, if you didn't sign up to speak before, did you sign up in public comment? When we read the record, what we said was, we don't allow comments during the meeting, but you can call the Arts Council and we can answer your questions. But we can't, after the public comment time, we really are not, it's not allowed to make comments in the panel meeting.
and obviously after the meeting, if anybody would like to talk with me as the chair, I'm happy to also have that conversation. So I apologize that you're here and now that you're not able to speak. So, but I understand. We will follow up with you appropriately as the council staff. So any additional questions or comments on anything that you want to take from a full slate approval? Okay. So with that, I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think I have 6. Yeah, we have 6 that we will consider separately, but for purposes of the remainder that are on this slate, I will entertain a motion for approval for everything on the proposal, but for those 6 that we just extracted.
I'll move it, Madam Chair.
Okay, I have a second? Second. Okay. Any further discussion on the slate that's before you for approval as rated or scored with the proposed recommended awards? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? So moved. Okay, so let's take up the 6 individual ones and go for it.
Don't want to preempt the conversation. Certainly, and everybody's, I think, permitted to score zeros. So no commentary there. It's just if the organizations have been fully vetted and they are eligible, I'm not so sure that we should make them ineligible. Simply because we don't believe that they might be as eligible as others. I know that that's an awkward way to say it, but I do believe a lower score is a meaningful message that perhaps the application is not as complete as it could be to help us make a better decision. That's all I would say is that I trust that these are all eligible applicants because they made it this far.
Thank you. Any other comments specifically on any of the? So historically, we have had a couple times where we have pulled a project and have not funded it and have not approved because we felt, and the majority of this commission felt that it wasn't meeting the criteria. So that is something we have done before. Again, we don't do it lightly. Again, these are organizations that are very important to our community. They're doing work that I think most of us agree with and support either professionally or personally. And everyone on this board is obviously a big proponent of the work they're doing. It's a question of, with the specific criteria set out by the bylaws and the intent of these dollars, do they meet that threshold? And so again, it's not a judgment on the value or quality of the work they're doing or the importance of the work they're doing so much as it is about whether or not this pot of dollars, which has specific intent, is designed to meet the needs that they have. Again, there may be other pots, or they may just not, they may need to find other sources of funding. So, so with that said, again, I don't disagree with you, but I also know that the staff does their due diligence. They do everything they can to try to screen them. But at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of this commission to then do the due diligence, to then make the recommendation. Because remember, anything we recommend today has to still go to the county commission. At the end of the day, we work at the will of the county commission, and their approval is when the funding actually gets awarded. So this is for us to scrub down, verify, and the onus is not on staff to do that full vetting. It is on us. So any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll take each one individually then. So I will start with Live Achieve, which is number 30904. And let me find it on the form here. Okay, so this is the Suicide Awareness Showdown. They had an estimated expenses of $825,000. They had a possible grant award of 100,000. They scored an average of 58.4, which would give them a recommended award of 58,400. Any comments specifically to this or the reasons why we would not feel this would be eligible or would want to adjust the scoring?
I just have one comment about this. I noticed there on their financials, I think the concern for me was this event budget was more than their annual financials for the entire organization. And looking at the numbers for their previous year, my take was the event budget felt very inflated. And so I worry on part of our process, your award amount is based off the budget that you submit. And I just don't know that I felt that the previous years, because this wasn't a first-time event, and looking at their annual financials for their last year did not show revenue numbers and expense numbers that matched their application.
I agree with Jason there. Also, I'm a huge proponent of mental health, so I was super, super excited when I saw this one. But reading through, something that I wish was different was the ticket pricing was really high. So of course, it's not going to be accessible for a lot of people. And other than their outsourcing, there wasn't a lot of asset I saw there in general. So, as well as the inflated budget.
Any other comments on this one? And as I shared, this was one of the ones that I had concern about because, again, I felt it was more health and wellness versus fine art, historic, natural recreation, lifestyle, culinary, the other criteria didn't fall in my buckets that we have outlined for us. So is there a recommendation from the committee or commission members that on how we should move forward with this one? Seeing no recommendations, it would be my thought based on what I'm hearing from you that this one would not be approved and that we would not fund it at all.
And I would make that motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Then seeing none with first and a second, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no.
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 Okay. It shows a majority. Did you get the counts?
Yes.
Okay. So this one, unfortunately, 30904 will not be awarded, and unfortunately, staff will have to give them notification. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is Victory Ship 30909. And let me find it on here. Okay. So this one, I believe, is the holiday extravaganza. So this is the Victory Ship extravaganza. They had total expenses of $49,832. The possible award was $24,916. They scored 57.60, and the recommended award is $14,351. This one did specifically articulate in there what the dollars would be used for, would be for lighting, for the space. So any comments or questions in regards to this one?
I would share that this one kind of baffled me last year as well, because it really felt like operational support for a season of something that they would do during the holiday season that may be a little bit different than, let's say, another season like the fall or the summer. So this one was a quandary to me, whether this was that met the criteria of festival, although it feels very festive, what they're trying to accomplish. And I do believe that they made the case that there was a bump in attendance during this time period due to the holiday focus.
Any other comments or questions? Any suggestions or recommendations on how we proceed with this one? Okay, well, again, very much I think we were in agreement. And I think that last year we did have some discussion in regards to this as well. And I think there's different ones that each year kind of prompt us to kind of relook at our way and reconsider and adjust our rules, criteria, and application. And again, it's an evolution that we're doing. So the question to us this year is, do we fund this at the $14,000 for lighting? And do we feel that that's going to bring an ROI back to our community within the intent of this grant, or do we just not fund it? So anyone want to make a motion on where the direction we want to go? If not, I'll be happy to. All right. Seeing nothing.
There's a little bit more cultural to this one than the one we just discussed, so I would recommend that we fund it at a lower amount.
Okay. And how would you propose that lower amount be determined?
I do agree with Elizabeth. This is challenging for me to motion just because I do think it's important we pay homage to our soldiers and veterans, but it is difficult to give $14,000 to pay for Christmas lights or something to accentuate the Grinch. So I'm going to sit back on this one.
Just one additional comment. I mean, I think this goes, we approved the Friends of the Riverwalk Holiday Spectacular, which was very similar in terms of we're paying for lights and decor along the Riverwalk, which is, in my idea, highlighting our asset, the Riverwalk in downtown Tampa. I kind of think the Victory Ship is doing the same. It's just not as publicly accessible as the Riverwalk, was my issue when I was scoring it. But I think if we gave value to the Friends of the Riverwalk proposal, this kind of deserves some of that same value.
Yeah, I would just continue by stating I think the score is reflective of the quality of the request. And I would make the recommendation that we go ahead and fund it this.
Then I will take that as a motion that we fund it as scored.
I'll second.
Okay, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor for providing Victory Ship 30909, the full funding as scored, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Show motion moved. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Winge 30895. Tampa International Friends Festival Winge event. It was estimated total expenses of $8,500. Maximum possible award is $4,250. Average score was 64.9. Total recommended award is $2,758.25. Any discussion or questions about this one? Again, I made the comment earlier, it's a very minimal ask. So, I think this one maybe in my mind is one that we just look at for how we enhance the future process of the application so that we, that it's clear as to why this wouldn't maybe be eligible in our minds with the criteria. But for today, are we comfortable with moving forward?
Yes.
I just need a motion.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. So all those in favor of approving Winge at the recommended award, say yay.
Yes, yay.
Those in opposed, say no. Show it moved. Okay, let's do the Miss Latina 30911. This is the Follow Your Dreams. It had an estimated total of $37,000. The possible award max was $18,500. It scored 57.5. Recommended award is $10,637.50. Any comments or questions?
On this one, I think it's definitely an eligibility question for me. And if it's our job to assist staff and, did you say scrub down? Is that what you said? I think, I think this is one that I would move to eliminate.
Okay. Any other comments or questions as relates to this one?
By the way, even though I think it's lovely and a wonderful idea and great organization, I just don't think it's applicable for us.
Okay. Any other specific comments? Okay. With that, do we have a motion to remove it from consideration?
So made.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on this one? Okay. For those in favor of eliminating this one from consideration, please say aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
Believe we still have a majority. So moved. Okay, I have, trying to keep track of my scribble notes here, guys, apologize. I have 30887, which is Tampa Pride Inc., Pride Fest. This one was estimated total of $372,500 for total expenses. Maximum award would have been $93,125. It scored average of 75, giving it a recommended award of $69,843.75.
Madam Chair, I think that's the wrong one.
Is that the wrong one?
Yeah, it's the one on the back, the Tampa Bay Pride Inc. Season 10 for concerts.
Got it,
The
okay.
30917,
Got it. I apologize.
right? Am I? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm doing I'm a scribbler, guys. I'm doing my best. So, okay, let me find that one. Got it. Okay, so let me strike what I just said. Let me come back at 30917 Tampa Bay Pride Band, Season 10. And that is a estimated total expense of $28,803.13. That is for a series of, it looks like 4 events. Maximum award would have been $14,000. Average score was 61.4. Recommended award is $8,842.56. Any questions or comments on this one?
I think just one comment. I know it's for their series, but I do know that at Riverfest, which is one of the events that they do, it is a free public event that they perform for. So I know that, we do support free public events. There are operational costs to make that happen. So, I mean, I would, my position would be to, and at the funding level, which is $8,842, I'd recommend keeping this just for that alone.
Any comments or questions? Otherwise, I'll accept a motion. Take that as a motion. Okay. Any seconds?
Second.
Okay. So all of those in favor of funding as scored, the recommended award for Tampa Bay Pride Band 30917, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Show it so moved. Okay, I have one more. Do I?
New Tampa Players, 30908.
Perfect. Okay, so 30908 New Tampa Players, the 23-24 session, including Shrek, Dream Girls, and Mamma Mia. Estimated total expenses $171,500, and possible award would have been $42,875, score of 75.2, and recommended award is $32,242. Questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I get a feeling that it is operational in nature, and I have an issue with that. But my other point is that we do very little with the arts in that northern part of the county. And this is a new site that is providing artistic expression and an opportunity for the people who live in that furthermost point of our county, our city, to have access to the arts. So on this one, I'm torn because I can see, and maybe that's something we need to talk about going forward, that if we believe something is operational in nature and should be assumed by that organization and it doesn't fit maybe exactly the criteria, that those don't come to us for scoring. But again, I think this is an opportunity to support the arts in a part of our city and our county that gets very little attention. And I know because I live there.
Any other comments or questions?
So this is a tricky one. And again, it's another, I love the new facility. I don't think it's eligible. However, I feel like now we're in conflict, having approved 30917 in the season of concerts, to act differently on this one. What I would like to do is use this as an opportunity to tweak those eligibility requirements before they come to us. But I don't think it would be appropriate to zero it out today.
Other comments?
I would just
Madam
say
Chair?
difference for me. Oh, yeah.
Yes, Rich. You're
Yes,
recognized.
Madam Chair, I'd like to just reiterate some of the comments that were made regarding the New Tampa Players. As was mentioned, their new home now is the New Tampa Performing Arts Center, which has been nearly a project 15 years in the making. This will be their inaugural season out there. So the collateral benefits that will be experienced by both the community and by the facility itself are not truly, we believe, not truly factored into this. Therefore, we would recommend full funding as scored.
Other comments? Otherwise, I'll take Rich's comments as a motion, but other comments?
I'll second that. I missed the notion that this was an inaugural launch, and I think that's important for support at the level that we've registered.
Any other comments? So we have a motion and a second to fund the New Tampa Players at the recommended award. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Show it so moved. So as a takeaway, I do think that there's some great feedback that we can take back as we workshop going into the next cycle. And again, I applaud you for, having kind of the thoughtfulness to have these kind of ongoing conversations around our criteria. I've said it many times in these meetings, these are taxpayer dollars, and these are dollars that we want to make sure that we're getting the best and highest use for. And we want to make sure that they really are going to the true cultural arts assets and the things that are going to really make our community vibrant. So as we're doing this, it's not easy, but it's important that we are really kind of protecting these funds so that they go to the intended purposes, because what we spend that doesn't deliver and have an ROI means that we're not giving it to somebody else who can deliver that ROI. So thank you for that. Hopefully staff has taken a lot of notes from this, and we will probably plan to have a workshop that we once again will look at our criteria. And I think the most poignant thing that has come from me is that we do need to look at, we've talked about the incubation of new events, but if there are events that also then in tandem help incubate access through, if it's facilities, then there may be a way for us to weave that in as well, where not that it's an exception to our rules, but that there's a caveat, right? There's a piece that says, if not this, but that, we may still be able to find our way to full funding or full approval. So, because I fully agree with that. How else are we going to help incentivize access? If you don't have a place to do your event, that's one of the main barriers to entry into the community. So I totally agree with that. And I think we need to look at that in our next workshop about how do we enhance the ability to support that piece of the puzzle. So any other thoughts just about going forward, about that evolution that we're doing, and just kind of high level that we want to make sure that we're working with the staff on for putting together our thoughts for the next meeting?
I liked the new scoring. I think the changes we made last year made it a lot easier to have that variability of what you thought.
I would just add, I'd like to applaud the work of the staff and everybody on the panel, because it was a lot of information to review. So I would thank you all for doing the hard work before it reached our doorstep. I'm not recollecting, but in the guidelines for the application, does it list ineligibility as well as eligibility?
It doesn't, I don't.
Actually, it does. There's some, but we could expand that. So there are some, for example, one that I looked at very closely was, obviously, I work at the state level, and I know I'm monitoring a lot of legislation and public policy and the impacts. And so one of the ineligibilities is it can't be sexual in nature. Right. So like I make sure that, because I'm very sensitive to what the state's doing and how that could impact us. So there are a few ineligible criteria, but we can definitely look at that.
It might be worthwhile, only because I see this often in other public grant applications, that it lists the ineligibility criteria as well as the eligibility criteria near one another.
Staff would welcome more specificity. We do take a full week doing staff review, and we check things against the guidelines, but it's a little squishy here and there. So we would greatly appreciate more specificity.
So we're going to then call a workshop, and we're going to scrub down the criteria, and we're going to add and enhance the ability to have less squishiness.
Yeah, love that.
So please give some thought to that. Go back after this as you kind of digest what we talked about today, and make your notes for our future meeting, because it probably won't be for a few weeks, months. So we'll get that scheduled as far as a workshop. But
Is it possible when we have the workshop or in advance, because I know now on Neighborly, we can't access the original applications. I'd like to go back and look at some examples of the ones that we're talking about. I think it would help refresh them and refresh my memory and get really fine tuned. So once they're submitted, they disappear.
yeah.
I just had access to them.
I can't get at this.
Oh, back in home, yeah, but back to 2021, I can see.
I can't see the ones we just did though.
I did.
If you click, you can.
Oh, you can? Oh, that's my fault then. Okay.
We'll figure that out. We'll do a little tutorial on how do you, yeah, that's.
And maybe it might also be helpful if, just for the sake of understanding, and maybe not calling out publicly what organization didn't make it to the list that came to us. it might be helpful to see some of the applications by high level and why they weren't eligible. So that we can, as we're thinking, we can take that into consideration when we're making recommendations of narrowing the scope of eligibility.
Actually, the only organization that was pulled from the list for eligibility was the issue of not being a nonprofit,
Okay.
and that's pretty clear cut.
All right, yeah.
But I think that that point is important, and I know that you as well, it was made, I believe it came from over here, I think. But I think that also kind of having that snapshot of knowing the why not.
Mhm.
And because what we don't want to do is start down a track where, we're inconsistent. And that we set a precedent on one and then we break that, whatever that rule that we thought we were applying is inconsistently applied somewhere else. Because I think that we don't want to be hypocritical and we don't want to then be unbalanced. Because again, there are organizations that, this is important to them and their success as an organization and with these events. And so, the goodwill and the intent of our thoughtfulness, it may not be, when you have 29 applications, it's hard to be completely balanced across all, right? And so I think we do have to try to put it in a position where we don't inadvertently score one with one logic and then we don't apply the same logic to something else, because that's going to be frustrating to the public, right? That's going to be frustrating to these organizations that, well, they did differently on that one than they did on me. And again, we would be frustrated if that was happening to us. So we have to be thoughtful about that. So the more defined we can be as we evolve the criteria, and consistently say the why, right? Like for me, I had my 3 whys. Like it either didn't meet it for me for here, here, or here. And I need to make sure that I'm applying that consistently, right? We all do. So I think it's great feedback, really. Okay, so let me go back to my agenda because I'm totally distracted. So if we've done the approval of the grant scores and award recommendations, if I'll go ahead and move from this unless there's anybody who raises their hand that they want to continue on this discussion path. And we will go to our yearly disclosure, conflict of interest requirements. Hopefully all of you have completed your forms.
Well, actually, we're going to email them to you after this meeting. This is required by the bylaws. We have to do it annually. This is the last meeting of this fiscal year, I believe. So we're going to remind you, send you the forms. If you can just get them back into us, that would be great.
Madam Chair, I always let Martine know that by the nature of my work, being the head of Visit Tampa Bay and marketing this destination to the world, a lot of the applicants that we approve are our content, right? Because we're out talking about the great festivals and events, and in some cases, they're even our partners. So I always want to make sure that's very clear, that we work with a lot of the applicants and we support a lot of these events because that's what we're out there talking about to the rest of the world. So I always want to make sure that's on record. I always put a little note on my financial disclosure, conflict of interest form, like, hey, by the nature of what our organization does, we're out there talking about all these things.
Absolutely. And just so the form itself asks you 2 questions, whether or not you or any of your immediate family members have a financial interest basically in any organization. And then the other is do you have any volunteer do you volunteer with any of these organizations? And so those would be the 2 specific questions they ask. But like Santiago, I also mentioned to staff that kind of inherently, I don't have any direct conflicts, but for example, I represent Tampa Theater in my professional life. I represent the Straz Center in my professional life. I represent venues, right? So again, on the public policy side. And so some of, when I'm reading these and I see things like, an event is being held at the Straz, it's not a direct conflict for me, but I also am very aware that there is a dotted line that I do have. And so I'm very thoughtful and mindful about that as well. So again, there's nowhere for me to per se write, but I can put a little note on there, just FYI. So again, if there's anything of that nature that you do find is kind of there, again, you're on this commission because we have confidence in your professionalism, that we believe that you have the capacity and ability to rise above that and look at it from the criteria standpoint. But if there's anything like that they don't ask you the question, but you think it should be disclosed, there's plenty of white space at the bottom. Just write it in.
We prefer to err to the side of full disclosure, and Santiago's excellent at it. But then, they aren't always conflicts of interest. When we look at it, they don't rise always to being a conflict of interest, but we have that documentation in case anything else. So we're just trying to be fully transparent. So we appreciate your help with that.
And that additional information does allow the county attorneys, if they see a red flag, to address it. And that way we don't find ourselves in hindsight going, ooh, wish we should have known. Yeah, so, okay. So with that, you will get an email, and I just ask that you try to timely get that back so that we don't have to harass you and cause the staff more work. We want to let's go to 8, to the Cultural Asset Commission Annual Report Requirements to the Board of County Commissioners.
So when this ordinance was passed in 2018, Ordinance 1812, that established the Cultural Assets Commission, I put this in your packet. Section 6E says the Cultural Assets Commission shall file annually with the Board of County Commissioners a report summarizing its activities conducted during the previous year and setting forth recommendation. The Commission's annual report and other such reports as it deems appropriate shall be made available to the public. The Arts Council has the exact same reporting requirement. And last year, we asked our board, it was our first year being part of the county, and they decided, the board decides how you want to present it and when you want to present it. And our board decided they wanted a PowerPoint because they felt that would be more meaningful and engage commissioners more than just a written report handed in, and that they wanted it early in the fiscal year. It just so happened that when we gave our report last year, Andy Cohen from Americans for the Arts was here talking about the research, the economic impact that we're doing. So on October 18th, the Arts Council Board has voted to do their report then. Randy Cohen is here giving the results of the last 2 years, the new economic impact study report. And we talked to the people in the county that are about these reports and said, both boards are under the Arts Council. Could we do it all in one fell swoop? And they thought that sounded like a great idea. Ron Barton likes the idea. So if you all prefer a different way to do it, that's your prerogative. But we, having a national thought leader in town to come to that presentation could make it, we're all about arts. We want drama. We want excitement. So, but the date that we're looking at, if we can get it on the agenda then, is when he is here, is October 18th. And we are looking at doing it as a PowerPoint that has information about all of your activities this year. So we're putting that out there. If any of you want to discuss and have a better idea, we're all for it.
Any concerns? Then we will suggest that the staff move forward with that as recommended.
I believe you all have to give us a vote.
Okay.
According to
I will
the
entertain
government services.
A
We have to have a
motion
vote
to
on
support
this.
October 18th presentation by PowerPoint.
So made.
Second by Santiago. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, so it moved. Okay, so the next activity is us looking at our potential board meeting dates and grant making schedule for the 2023-2024 cycle. You should have received in your packet a listing of those dates. We are showing Friday, December 1st, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. is our next scheduled meeting. Yes. No.
It's the first Friday in the month for the 4 quarters, for the quarterly meetings that are required.
Okay. I just want to make sure that these are in order. So it says Friday, December 1st, 2023, Friday, March 1st, 2023.
I'm sorry, that should be
Okay, 2024.
24,
Okay,
sorry.
that's what, I was like, wait.
I don't have what you're looking
much
at,
work.
so.
Oh, okay, I'm just special.
Yeah.
Let me read them to you then. So we are proposing Friday, December 1st, 2023 as our next scheduled meeting. That would be the one that I suggest we have the piggyback workshop, right? Then our next meeting in the 2024 calendar year would be on March 1st.
And you would be reviewing cycle 2.
And then our third scheduled meeting would be Friday, June 7th. And our final meeting will be Friday, September 6th. So it's the first Friday of the month of each quarter. I obviously will confirm my availability based on my Tallahassee schedule, and as needed, I will hand the baton to Elizabeth, our vice chair.
We don't have to put this in stone today, but we're actually doing, first of all, the people in the public, being able to post all of the dates when the applications open for both cycles. We have been asked if we couldn't do that. This is so people can plan rather than just waiting till they, so I think this is really coming from the community and potential grantees that they'd like to have. Also, the way we worked it out and timed it out with the board meeting dates and the application grant making, you would have more time to review the applications. And we thought that would be a positive as well, so.
I think that's fantastic, especially if our queue continues to grow.
What would be the date based on a March 1st meeting that the grant applications need to be submitted?
Based on the March 1st, it's okay. Application period opens on January 8th. It closes on the 26th, so applications would be in. Staff review would be the following week, and then the commission application review scoring would be from February 5th to February 23rd, which is much more time than you had this cycle, and I thought that would be a good thing.
If anyone wants to just take a picture of this today, I have it with me, but we will have staff send out a copy of this along with your conflict of interest. And so you'll get those 2 documents. And then obviously they will do as they have done and send out a calendar invite so that you can put that onto your calendar to lock that time in. One note, as we discussed earlier, the calendar invite will come out as 9 a.m., but our meeting officially starts at 9:30. So just be mindful of that. I mean, I'm happy to have you all here a half an hour early, but you don't need to be here till 9:30 or actually 9:25. You're late if you're not here by 9:25. So, so we'll send this out as well. So, so barring, the question will be is if you cannot make it, we just would like to know because we have to assure quorum, especially on meetings that we have the business to conduct that we need to be able to move forward on. So. Okay, with any additional comments or questions on schedules, on the process there? Okay. And of course, if you have questions, you're always welcome to call staff following the meeting as well. Discussion regarding final payment related to allowable deviations between final cash expenses and estimated cash expenses. And this is obviously from the last cycle, so I'll hand it back over to staff.
So this is another area where we could use some more specificity, because the under final cash expenses, it says if final cash expenses deviate substantially from the event estimated cash expenses submitted with the awardee's application, or as revised as part of installment payment 1, the county in its sole discretion may reduce the final payment. Prior performance of applicants will be considered in future award cycles. And then we have some outcomes, some of the ranges that we've seen. So there's no precise formula. There's no precise percent that is, oh, you don't get your final payment or you don't. This puts staff in a difficult position. So I feel like we're making judgment calls that we shouldn't be making. And it would really be helpful, and maybe this is something you want to do in the workshop too, but I just wanted, we see this as something that needs more clarification so that we have really good guidelines about what this board wants and what they think is fair, because not giving you your final payment's a pretty big deal. And we just could use some more clarification.
And what I heard is that the challenge we have is the word significant, right? That we need definitions. And so let's define at our workshop. So we'll have those 3, so we'll have 3 kind of agenda items at the workshop, and this will be one of them. And we can help kind of put some parameters around when does it trigger the terminology of significant. And that way there's a more definite, finite kind of parameter that the staff can work with. And then possibly we can, depending on the timeline too, if we could put in a provision that says something along the lines that if there is a questionable one, it could come back to the board for reconsideration. Maybe we can give that kind of backstop for them as well. So that, again, the onus is not on the staff to make these determinations. And if we're not giving enough guidance in kind of the written word and there's subjectivity, things can be brought back to us as needed. We could always work on that as well. Any other thoughts or comments on that?
I have a couple of questions. So just for some clarity on my end. So let's just say we've approved a grant that's a 4-to-1 match. Let's just say it's substantially an inflated budget. They can't determine, or it can't be determined that the match was met. All of the expenses were lower than projected. Is this the complication on how to release those final funds?
I don't think that's
It's more, when I get a third request in, I'm looking at what was that basis of their expenses were on cash expenses that they put in the application. And then like a couple of them that were on the packet were significantly lower. Say they came in and they said, oh, we're going to spend $300,000, and instead their final cash expenses ended up being $100,000. Well, that's significant.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that I then go, then I probably cannot pay you this. And we talk about it a bit, and I send out an email and I ask if there's anything else that they can provide that's actually cash, to show that maybe they had an error in their accounting or something like that. But honestly, there's a few of them that have been quite significant. Gasparilla Concourse to Elegance was 68% of inflated. What they got.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's significant because you wouldn't necessarily give a payment out if they couldn't demonstrate the total expense being what they projected 4-to-1.
Yes.
and they did not receive their final payment. But
Okay, as a result of that. So what happens to those funds that we've tethered that are not expended? Does it roll into the upcoming fiscal year as?
all of the funds, in fact, you've never spent all of the funds that are available. But whatever is remaining rolls back into the general fund, and then you start with 2.1 million the next year. So you start fresh with the same amount that you started the year before. Any forfeited grants or anything else at the end of the fiscal year goes back to the general fund, and then you have the same budget for the next year.
And that was a comment I was making earlier, is I want to make sure that highest and best use, because right now we may not be exceeding, we have less requests than we have money, but at some point I'm hoping if the conversations we've had around marketing and communicating this out, that we will have very viable, well-deserving grants, and I would hate to be giving them to those that may not be as qualified. Right now we have more money than we've needed, but that may not be the case in the future. So, Santiago.
Yeah, my question was to Martina or Lisa. With some of those, we must have some historical data on how they've performed, or all they knew. All of these that we're having this issue with new, because we could probably go back in the process and say, we've been awarding X amount for so many years to this one group. And have we had that issue in the past, or is this something that's just coming up with new events that are not matching the estimated numbers?
This rule is a new rule, so we don't really have much of a history. I believe you did this
At the last
year.
workshop.
Right, but I mean, we've awarded to that group maybe in the past.
Possibly, yes.
So you could go back and understand then when they're applying for whatever they're applying, that it doesn't quite match up with what has transpired or has been actual in prior years. Yeah, I'm not following the rule. I'm following the group. The group applies, and you can say, well, we've awarded for the last 5 years, and we've made the final payment based on those numbers. Why are they coming in with this number this time, which doesn't seem like it could possibly happen?
Right.
So you've got 4 full years. The first year of funding was
Right.
2019. We've been doing a lot of historical
Mhm.
looking at, still very young commission and grant-making program at 4 years.
Right.
We do know everything that's, been granted out and what has happened. So if you wanted to see, not everybody would have applied every year. Some might not have applied before. But if this is something that would be helpful when you're looking at applications, because other grant programs I've done, you get a history
Right.
with it. And when I'm a grant reviewer, I've always found that extremely helpful.
Because we're looking for growth, but we're not looking for like this huge inflation
It would
on
also
on
show
a
you-
projected number.
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
This-
Like, wait a minute.
This might also help you determine, is this event growing if it's the same,
Right.
and some of the things that you seem to have been looking at in the application. So we could easily, staff could give you that data when we give you the application, like you want more paper, but we can do it.
No, I think that's really important. And I think probably on a very serious note is that it is not, I don't think it was the intention of the county commissioners, nor the vote for the public use of tax dollars to go back to the general fund. And I think that that's a really important point that the arts organizations that are submitting their applications should understand that these things are fragile and they're grants, right? And so I do think that we need to have that information at hand. If they are over projecting and underspending, then it has an impact on tethering funds that then go to the general fund and not specifically for arts programming. And I think that everybody needs to understand.
Well, if we go with the schedule, if this works, then the December workshop meeting, we could do some scenarios. So you could see it, and that will give us time to put that in place before the first cycle of grants.
Good.
I think that'll be helpful because I know I made notes for myself to look when we come to the conclusion of this process. For example, one that I flagged for myself on the budget side was the Gasparilla Music Foundation. Absolutely love what they do, right? But they demonstrated on their budget expenses of 2.427 million and a revenue of 2.210 million, but other grants, not county, but other grants of 234,000. Well, if you do the math, their revenues are greater than their expenses. So why do they need additional grant dollars, right? So I'm waiting to see, I'm going to look at this one and I scored it accordingly. And I'm going to watch to see how that comes in, right? Because again, inflating it is not to their favor. It may feel like they can get over the next threshold, right? But if you're inflating, then what's going to ultimately happen is you're going to then falter at the end, which then could do great harm to the program as a whole.
Sure, but I think we had somewhat of a similar conversation the last time we met, if my memory serves me correctly, is that any type of revenue that might be generated from ticket sales that shows a surplus at the end of the project year would be permissible because it then funnels into a more successful next season of a similar program. And so I'm not so sure that I have necessarily, not that anybody else shouldn't, have a concern with surplus as much as it would be not making budget and then putting the institution at risk and the use of the taxpayer dollar at risk.
I'd be interested though in
Yeah.
that situation because if we are making the investment and those revenues that are over the expenditures are banked, I'd like to see that banked amount be shown in their budget rolling into the next year then, right? Because if
Yes.
there was a $50,000 surplus, then how is that being then baked into the following year so that there's less need? Because remember, over time, we want sustainability and growth.
Right,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to
Yeah.
understand how those funds were then used
Yeah.
towards the projects next.
As always, these are always great conversations, you guys. Thank you.
But so for the Gasparilla Music Festival, though, then there's the element of, do those excess revenues go to the instruments that they buy and donate to the schools? And how does that?
And we've had hearty and healthy conversations around the
Yeah.
quote unquote fundraising element and whether it's a component of or if it's core to, right? So we've we've pick on Pig Jam, like we've had those robust conversations around really amazing events that then have charitable beneficiaries, which are also really critical because they help access other audiences and they help elevate conversations around other, really dynamic, organizations. So again, we will continue to thread that needle, I think, when it comes to fundraising components.
Yeah, and I think at some point, and it's not going to be easy, you have to come up with some percentage of profit that the organization's making where they can be freed from the process, right? And you don't want to do that too soon because you want them to grow. But again, it was all about sustainability. So if you've got a group that now is making X percentage of profit, and they're doing everything they need to do, right? Whether it's charitable work or having a successful event and still growing the event, that there's an opportunity then for it to pull away from us. So I think if we could ever come up with that magical percentage number of the growth of the organization where they don't necessarily need any more support, that would be, I guess, the optimum solution. But getting there, I think, is probably the work.
I agree. And I actually made pretty robust comments in most of my applications, my 9 that I scored 0, and I didn't pull them all. Again, I'm trying to be not completely, over the top, but there was some that showed really amazing capacity for private fundraising. And if they have said capacity, isn't that where we want them to grow as well, right? So when I'm seeing somebody who has significant value opportunity for private fundraising in lieu of county funding, right? I mean, I don't want to not be a partner, but at the same time, I think we also want to look at that and say, if they are knocking it out of the park and they're getting everybody to sponsor them, let's help them grow that piece. Let's let the private entity, and let them fund themselves so that we can go help incubate things that don't have that bandwidth or that halo, as I call it, and across the board. So, yeah.
I'm going to jump out of my chair on that note, because I think that the community should understand in general that private philanthropy is the #1 way in which nonprofit organizations support themselves. When the public entities say that they are not interested in supporting as a result of strong philanthropy from private entities, it's a message that says that this is not part, the arts and culture is not part of the community as a part of the infrastructure. It's basically not saying anything or not supporting it is giving permission for the private sector to do the same. So I would suggest, even at a very small percentage, that public entities should take a stand on the importance of arts and culture in their community and support them to the degree that they can, rather than not support them at all.
And I agree with that. But again, it has to have balance.
Yes.
Right? So
agreed.
We don't want to deter them from pursuing the private because we're fully funding their need, and so they cannot worry about, it has to be a public-private partnership at its
Agreed.
core.
Agreed.
So we don't want to over-incentivize them not to seek those private funding, and if they have the capacity, they should.
Absolutely. Even if it's imbalanced, I agree.
Yeah. All right, any other questions or concerns, and anything else that for consideration as we do kind of brainstorm on the workshop? Okay, was that it for the actual deviation between final cash expenses?
We've done that.
Okay, then moving on to other business, number 11 on our agenda. I will open it up to all of you for other business, but I do have one item to share with you. Okay, anyone online? Okay.
Eileen, could you hand this?
I think that you all know what I do in my day job, so I'm astutely keen to what's happening kind of at the state and the local level, and so I have been very involved in the conversations happening around not-for-profit funding at the county level holistically, but specifically I wanted to bring to your attention that there's a memorandum that you're going to be shared that has the details of it, the actual written language, but at the board meeting on August 16th of the BOCC, there was a item at the very conclusion of the meeting brought forward by Commissioner Cepeda that she had a request for staff. So I'm just going to read the request so that you're familiar with it. Requested to staff to report back, to be brought back to at the September 7th, 2023 regular meeting on the total amount of county funding provided to the Arts Council and to the Cultural Assets Program, us, over the last 5 years, and also wanted to know if there was anything keeping the board from reallocating the funding currently budgeted for the Arts Council and Cultural Assets Program so that the board could instead put these dollars towards shortfalls in the county's basic services like transportation and public safety. So, so there's obviously a conversation going on holistically about not-for-profit funding, Commissioner Wastel has put forward some guidelines for, distribution of said funding as we're going into the budget process. So just wanted to make you all aware of this, that this is an ongoing conversation amongst the county commissioners. Again, this commission exists, persists, and is funded at the will of the county commission. And so our charge is to, institute the things that they provide to us as our guidelines. So it's possible that there will be a continued conversation around whether the funding for this program should continue and at what level. I will also for timeline, the budget process is in full swing, and there's going to be 2 budget meetings that will happen on September 14th and September 21st. So I think that over the next month, we will see how this conversation plays out. And we will continue to monitor that. If there's any significant developments, we will have staff update the board as to any impacts to this program as it's determined by the county commission. So just wanted to put that on everyone's radar. Any questions or thoughts on that or any other business? Okay. So without anything else, I will call for a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
There's no guarantee, but certainly